In the last video, I talked about some of the difficulties that you can have when trying to get your elevation right and get your cant right on a lot of bipods. And some of the weirdness that you can get into with some of these Harris clones especially. And what we're really talking about mostly is this right here, this spring-loaded leg, which is just a pain if you ever have to do anything out in the field. I mean, if you're actually hunting with a bipod on your rifle, having to push this down into the ground while spinning this is just awful. Now there are all kinds of ways that people can get around the cant issue, because you do want that rifle straight up and down with gravity so your bullet doesn't do weird things off at longer distances. And there have been a bunch of different ways that people have tried to address this with canting heads. Like this one right here has a little thumb screw that you can turn, and then that allows this to actually swivel back and forth and cant. And if you want, you can leave this loose for the shot so that you can maybe track through game, or you can use it just to get your level and then lock this down. But this has kind of the eternal issue that all of these bipods are going to have, since it's really the rifle sitting on top of the bipod. It's always going to feel like trying to balance on a ball. It just wants to fall off. The rifle wants to fall over. So let's see, if I loosen this, where's it going to go? Yeah, it always wants to fall over. It doesn't really want to go true with gravity. You have to force it that way. And that is when we get into some new ideas like this right here. There have been bipods before that the rifle actually sits under this kind of tripod, or this bipod thing. You have, you usually get kind of a wide stance sticking off here, and then the rifle can actually hang on the underside. And that's going to fix pretty much everything. It's going to be extremely easy to get the right cant, even though in this case this one actually does have those silly spring retraction legs. This one has so many other cool tricks, doesn't even matter, I don't care. So we're going to take a look at this today, see what's actually in the box, and see how it's going to work on a rifle like this. All right, let's go ahead and get rid of this one. This is a perfectly fine Harris, and you know, actually, I took a look at the Harris clones just yesterday out on their website, or excuse me, not the Harris clones, but the actual Harris bipods, and they have given up, it looks like, on their spring retraction models. They don't do that anymore. They don't make those. Maybe they have one as kind of a reproduction for people trying to get a true setup for some of their, like if someone's doing an M24 or an M40 and wants to make sure that it uses military standard equipment, then you can still maybe find that one out there. But it looks like their regular catalog is all just either spring pushing or it is just neutral. So you have to extend the legs yourselves, but they don't want to go back up in the housing. Either of those sounds just fine to me. I prefer the springs pointing down, but that's okay. I can live with the neutral ones as well. All right, so this right here, very different concept. And while I'm busting this out, I should mention that we got one really good comment that I think it has the ring of truth out there. It was Fouvet was saying that the bipods that have the spring retraction, like this one, that it was an attempt to reduce vibrations, keep the legs from flying out, and just kind of overall make it a bit stealthier out in the woods, or you know, wherever it is that you were. And I can kind of see that. I think that one really has the ring of truth to it. To me, I don't think that's a good enough reason to have that. I just hate spring retention legs, or spring retraction legs, but that's okay. We can live with it on this one. All right, so this is the Overbore bipod from UTG. And like I say, there are some others out there that have kind of a similar way of working, but this one just happens to meet the price point of a lot of you guys better. This one comes in at about 135 bucks, I think is what I paid for this one off Optics Planet. It looks like it lists for about 160 something, that's what the MSRP is, but then you can get it for less, which is considerably less than any of the other options out there. I'll put some of the names down below so you can see some of the competition in this sort of market. But here's some of the really cool things about this. Okay, first off, you're gonna get a very wide stance. So you have a big push button right here on the leg to get this down into position. And this is going to be very stable. You can see that you can hit a 45-degree position. So you have all the way forward, you have 45 degrees. and then you have completely deployed. And by the way, if you feel like you ever want to fold this backward, you want the legs to come back on this side of the handguard instead of pointing out forward, there is a set screw right here on the underside of the leg. You can unscrew this, and I think that'll make it so that it can go past this detent right here. You can see that this has kind of a squared off side, and that will allow it to go past that position. So if you want, you can do that sort of thing, but it's kind of an option. So like its name indicates, this is intended to sit over the bore, just like that, with the rifle hanging down on the underside. That's where we get into this piece right here. This is the Picatinny attachment that goes right up top here, and it does have a quick release for the bipod. So this right here has a little bit of spring tension, and that holds this in place. It's not going to fall out. If you press the button right here, it pops right out. So you have a spigot and a socket. And some of you guys can maybe tell me, I'll put the diameter of this spigot. You can tell me if this matches up with AICS dimensions, the Accuracy International system, because there actually are stocks out there that are built to take one of these spigots directly. You can just pop this right into place. It's usually on the underside of the stock. So if you want to get into the AICS system, this might fit. I'm going to put dimensions, I'm going to put the length and the diameter, and you can tell me if you think that this is actually going to match up there. But yeah, that's the two-piece right there, making the bipod quick release. But you can see that this part right here is not. This is just going to have two Torx screws on this side here, and it's going to attach to the rail either on the top side or on the bottom. And that's where we're going to get into something a little bit funky with this one. Okay, now first off, if I have this with the Picatinny pointing up, then I can put this on the underside of the rifle and it will function like a regular bipod. It'll actually function like a really good bipod. A lot like a lot of the AICS ones that we have out there. But the way that this is going to work best is if we can get it up over the top. So this is what I really want to see. I'm going to attach it up here using the goodies that they provided here in the box. So I've got the Torx wrench and an extra screw. That was really nice of them to include. It's so easy to lose these things, especially if you're swapping things around out in the wild. But I want to see if the scope gets out of the way. That's going to be a big deal for me. You can see that on this kind of rifle, this precision bolt action rifle, the rail is relatively high relative to the scope. So I might be looking through a big old block of metal. Sometimes if things like this are out of focus in the foreground, it can be okay, you know, if it's a high magnification scope. And let's find out. Okay, so what's really nice about this, I can feel this already, this locks in really tightly. You have three, count them, three lugs on the bottom, and they are going to jam right into the Picatinny rails, and this has barely any movement without even being attached yet. Let's go ahead, I'm gonna cheat this forward like usual. Kind of pushing the piece forward. Make sure that this is loose. Okay, I could feel that immediately picking this up. The rifle wants to naturally come to just a perfect alignment. So some people were asking in the last video, wouldn't it be nice if somebody came up with a self-leveling bipod? There you go, this self-levels. And I'm gonna do something a little crazy here. I'm gonna go ahead and extend one of these legs a bit, jam that down, and as you can see, it doesn't matter what you do with the legs. The bipod is hanging under this point right here. It wants to level out. This is going to be absolutely brilliant out in the wild. And if I want, I can leave this kind of loose, and you're going to notice a couple things. First off, if I grab onto this leg, it not only has the ability to cant, it has 45 degrees of total, or 44 degrees of total cant. It also has 22 degrees of heading. So if I am tracking through a moving animal, if I'm trying to follow along with a running animal, no problem. I can swing right along with him, and this is gonna go right with it. There is a screw right at the top of the bipod, and that's how you set your tension. Right now it's set a little bit high. If I wanted it to be a little bit floppier, I could loosen that up, but this feels great. It's gonna give me a little bit of fight back. And these two are independent. So I've got the heading right here that I can change. And once I get my cant right, I can lock that down. That'll keep the cant exactly the way that it is, and I can just focus on following through my shot. This is just wicked cool. I love it, love it, love it. So here is what it looks like in the stowed position. You can see that it's gonna be kind of bulky if you have this still attached to your rifle. You may have a tough time actually getting this in your case. You might need one of the soft cases or one that's just a little bit thicker than usual. You can see what that looks like right there. So yeah, it's a big thing. But that's if you want to stow this with it attached. All I have to do is just loosen up this screw, press the button, and there, I can store this all by itself in the case, no problem at all. And how this is also a really big deal is that I don't have to go stumping around out in the woods with this behemoth attached to the end. I can actually walk around with this in my hands and this in my pack. And if it comes time to take that long range shot, I can just bust my bag open, pop that on there, and that way I have the weight on my back, not out on the end of my rifle. I think this is just brilliant, and I cannot wait to see how this goes. And by the way, this is another one, you guys, I did not ask UTG for this bipod. I just plain bought it because I intend to use this a lot out in the field. Okay, some other really cool, let me get into some of the stats about this. First, you have a total distance between the bottom of this piece right here. Your total height is going to be from 7 inches to 11 inches. So as you can see, this is going to handle a pretty large rifle. So if you have an AR-10 that's kind of one of the heavy ones and you want to be able to deploy it out in the field and be able to use it effectively, you can see that we have plenty of room for big magazines. This is an MDT 10 rounder right here, and some kind of AR-10 20 round mag would have no trouble at all fitting under here. And if you wanted to get into a 30 round mag or 26, maybe with your 224 Valkyrie, everything's gonna fit under here just fine. Some of the other stats, like I said, this is heavy, so we're looking at over 24 ounces for this all combined, the piece up here and then the bipod as well. So yeah, it's very heavy. This is going to be considerably heavier than a lot of the other options. You can see that they've done some fluting here in the aluminum to try to keep the weight down some, but you still have some cast, it seems like iron parts up here, and you're going to have steel for the springs and all that. If you want to get rid of that horrible feature, maybe you can dig into this and actually get the springs out, save yourself some weight, and actually make the bipod better. But actually, this is something I want to point out too. Those springs that retract, usually it means that when you go to retract and kind of tear down your rifle, that you're going to have one great big clatter. But listen to this. It's actually not bad. They've done some work to dampen this. I'm not sure if they have some kind of conical section in here or if it's just kind of hitting some rubber, but this is nowhere near as loud as these bipods of this type usually are. So yeah, as far as speed goes, I would give this one of the highest ratings that I could give a bipod. This is going to be extremely quick, and quick while being precise. I can pick one of the leg notches, I can pick a different one, and because of that floating cant, I don't have to set my precision on the leg itself. I can let the leg be just a little bit off. I can let this platform right here be just a little bit off, and this one is gonna come true. All right, so now here's the moment of truth. Speaking of which, we're gonna see what this is like with a scope out on the end, looking through that block. Okay, I am at 4x, and only if I move my head strangely, oh, this is 4.5. Yeah, 4.5x. Only if I move my head strangely, I can begin to see the block. It's like I'm looking right through it. And that's at low magnification where things are gonna be the worst. If I crank it all the way up to 30x, I see nothing. It's just a normal view. So yeah, I'm really impressed with that. kind of cool the way that that works. It's like when Mark and Sam after work, I'll put a link to their channel, when they're out doing their extreme long range stuff, they'll be looking straight through the barrel of their gun pretty much, and they can still see their target. That's because of how high they have to get that thing pointed and how low they have to get that scope pointed. Okay. Now some other things. This is actually the first time that I've had this on a rifle. So let's see if I can figure out what this feels like to me. This little nut right here, you can set the tension for how the cant goes, so you can make it really easy and floppy, or you can crank it down some and make it just a little bit firmer. And if I were to start taking some precision shots, I'd be unstoppable. The one that I used on the second to last hog hunt for hitting a hog with 6.5 Creedmoor at 400 yards while running, that one was the Recon Flex. That's also a UTG bipod. It's one that attaches to the sides of a Magpul, what is that, M-LOK rail. So it attaches to that, but it has no flexibility to it. Because this one has the moving parts up front, I can not only be extremely stable, and I can actually make this perfectly stable if I want, but I feel confident enough here that it's not going to do anything I don't want, and I can move this around very smoothly through a moving target. This would be an ultimate long-range hunter bipod right here. Yeah, I think that snipers would love this, and we'll see over time how it holds up. I expect it'll do well because my other UTGs, except for one really, really cheap one, like a $25 bipod, they've all performed extremely well. No weird issues, they've never fallen apart. They just seem to be really well built, especially when you consider that price. Pretty amazing. All right, so that's the skinny. I hope I got into everything there. If you have any other questions, go ahead and put them down in the comments below. I will try to respond to anything. If you guys have any questions about this that I failed to mention here today, thanks a lot for watching. And I'm gonna put up our sponsors right here so you can see some of the folks out on Patreon that have helped to purchase this gear and some of the other things that you see here on the bench. So thanks a lot, you patrons of the Destructive Arts. If you want to join them, I'll put a link up there, and I will see you guys around. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These two videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, The Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.